Hey everyone, what is up and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ella and in today's video I'm going to be telling you how to get a first in your English degree without doing any of the reading. Honestly, watch this if you're studying English at university. I'm about to give you an all areas access into how I managed to get a first in my English degree at a top UK Russell Group university without doing hardly any reading at all. Now, just if you want the receipts, here is proof that I got a first class degree in English at the University of Nottingham. You know, I'm not faking this here. I'm not trying to fool you guys. I got a first class degree without doing hardly any reading, and I'm going to tell you exactly how I did it. Now, first of all, I want to put a disclaimer out there. I am not promoting a lazy work ethic. I am not lazy. I work very, very, very hard. However, my motto in life has always been work smarter, not harder. So if there is a way that I can save myself time while still producing the same quality of work, then why wouldn't I do it? I will have time for so many other things. I can do side hustles. I could do things like YouTube. And also, the more time you have on your hands, the more time you have for other things, you know, like side hustles, social media, hobbies, social life, etc. So even though I say that I do hardly any reading here, that's not to say that I didn't work hard, because I did, but it's just a very different way of working than the conventional way you might go about doing an English degree. So I am going to split this video up into two main sections. So the first part of this video is going to talk about how I approach essays and coursework and like sort of my general tips and tricks for how you should go about studying if you're not doing like the main reading. And the second part of the video is how I write my essays. So the biggest thing is that I would never pick topics or books that I thought I wouldn't be able to get to grips with easily and quickly. In other words, I either picked books I already knew of, you know, roughly knew about, or I would pick themes that I knew a lot about. So in other words, I'd always pick books that I'd already heard of, or I'd pick themes that I already knew a lot about. For instance, in my case, I happen to know a lot about feminism, both culturally and historically. It's just something that I've always naturally taken an interest in. So most of the time when it came to writing my essays, I would often always opt for, you know, gender or masculinity or feminism or that kind of thing, because I already have quite a good base knowledge on that before I even start writing the essay, before I even start doing the module. And also on top of that, because I take a natural interest in that topic, it's gonna make it a lot easier for me to write on it. I mean, that's just common sense, right? Not only will picking things you find interesting make it easier for you to write the essays, but it will also contribute to your general wealth of knowledge on the topic. It will make it easier for you to make links, you know, make contextual references, you know, talk about critics from that time, because if you already know a lot on that topic, it's gonna make your life a lot easier. Basically, the more you already know on a topic, the better. Make your life easy, not harder. My second tip is to say that just because you don't spend the time reading the actual books, that doesn't mean you shouldn't spend your time reading anything or not working on your subjects. So the first thing I always did before writing an essay was getting a full picture of the narrative. This is so important, you know. A lot of the time people always ask me, you know, when I talk about how I don't really do the reading for my degree, people always say, okay, but like, how do you know what the books are about if you don't read the books? Just because I don't read the books cover to cover, that doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about. So the first thing I always do, so basically the internet is your best friend. And I hate to say that, but it really just is your best friend in this case. So usually a quick Google search with insert book name and plot summary did the job. So let's say, you know, I wanted to know The Great Gatsby plot summary, I would Google it and I would read several websites plot summary on the book so I could get a full picture of what the narrative consists of from different viewpoints. On top of this, you know, I'd watch any film adaptations, play adaptations, that kind of thing. Basically anything that shortened the amount of time I would have to spend on the book. The whole point here is that you're trying to be efficient, you're trying to work smarter, not harder. So basically I would do anything that would help me get a better idea on the narrative without actually having to read the book itself. Okay, so next I would decide on my angle. This is kind of like your way in, like how are you going to approach your essay. So this is kind of like your unique viewpoint, your unique argument, like what is your way in? So if the question is preset, then obviously skip this step. But if it's more thematic, so let's say it just gives you a theme to talk about in relation to your module. You know, say it gives you a list of themes and you get to pick from them. So I would always choose the question or the topic that I find most interesting. I will never choose something that is out of my comfort zone. I will never choose something that I don't know a lot about, mainly because when it comes down to it, you will still get the same mark whether it's something you're interested in or whether it's something you're not. So I always think, make your life easier. Like, why am I going to make my life hard and do something that I don't really know a lot about, that I feel quite uncomfortable with, when I could write about something that I know a lot about, that I find interesting and that I can smash out of the park, you know? And if you already know the conversation behind a topic, then you're halfway there. So the next thing that I feel like I should mention is that critical essays are your best friend. They really and truly are. And I also feel like it's important to say at this time that you should never ever plagiarize, no matter how much of a pinch you're in, you know, no matter how much you might need to get your essays done, you know, you've got one night left, you're not written anything, never plagiarize. You know, nowadays universities have really advanced like plagiarism checking systems, so they will always know if you've plagiarized. Even another university essay, like even if, you know, it's encrypted from a different university, you know, it's your friend up in Scotland who's written an essay on the same thing, do not plagiarize. Honestly, it will get you absolutely nowhere. And also, that's not what I'm encouraging in this video whatsoever. It's just a different way of working. However, and this is a big however, that does not mean that you cannot read other people's essays. So what I would always do is I would read lots and lots of different essays to sort of get an educated second opinion on the text I'm reading. I think a lot of the time, if you read different people's point of view, it can actually help to shape your own, and it can introduce you to new ways of looking at the books that you might have never considered before. So when you're reading these essays, make any notes of killer quotes you can use if they're from like a respected academic critic, and also like make any notes of like really interesting viewpoints they have, and see if you can sort of use that, sort of internalize that and use that in your own essay in some sort of way. Don't plagiarize their ideas, but just sort of use it as a starting point to sort of boost your own ideas, if that makes sense. And eventually at this point, it will start to become clear how your essay will form itself. So next, quotes. The biggest question then is, if you don't read the books, how are you going to be able to quote the text? It's a perfectly reasonable question, and you know, this is where it gets fun. There are a multitude of amazing study websites out there. To name a few: SparkNotes, LitCharts, Schmoop, British Library, Jester, etc. These are all websites that do actually compile texts and quotes according to a theme. Yeah, that's right. These websites actually compile quotes according to themes. They do half the work for you. They give you page numbers, chapters, everything you need. So even if you can't find the exact quote from one of these websites, you can find a passage that, you know, is sort of within a broader conversation of your theme, and then you can read around that quote in the book. So maybe you could read like a few pages before, a few pages after. You can even read that chapter if you really want to, but it will actually cut down your reading time so much. So, you know, by this point, you have got a full picture of the narrative. You know what the books are about, you know what the themes are, you know what your quotes are, you've got your critical quotes, you've got everything you need to start writing your essay. So at this point, it really comes down to your essay writing skill. And you know, now I've got my degree, I feel like it would be rude not to give you guys an all areas access how to write a first class essay. That's right, I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it, and I'm not going to keep anything. I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it. The first thing that I think is really important to mention is that you need to have a unique viewpoint. Lecturers read hundreds of thousands of essays, maybe not hundreds of thousands, lecturers read thousands of essays a year on the same topics. Can you imagine how boring that gets? You know, you read the same thing over and over again, you're probably going to give them average marks because it's an average essay. However, if you have a unique viewpoint on a topic that is oversubscribed, that is interesting for them to read, and that piques their interest. So in second year, I wrote an essay on romantic fiction It was about feminism in the 18th century, and whilst I think the obvious stance to take is how men oppress women in these texts, or like how male writers, you know, oppress women in some sort of way, but instead I took the viewpoint of saying how women oppress themselves in female written texts, just because I think that is a really interesting way of approaching the topic, and something that isn't overly done sort of in essays. It's not like the natural sort of easy way in, if you will. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about structure. I'm going to talk about how your essay should sort of look. So you always want an introduction, you always want a paragraph that contextualizes your essay, whether that is a strong bit of history relating to your title, whether it is like contextualizing a quote in a preset question. You know, you really want to contextualize your topic in some way and give them sort of an interesting way of framing your argument that is to come without giving anything away. Then your second paragraph is a spoiler. Your lecturer, your professor does not want surprises. This is basically like the synopsis of your whole essay. You want to tell them exactly how it's going to go. You want to talk about where you're going to start, where the middle is, where the end is. You want to talk about how you make your points and how you lead from each point. It's basically like a blurb. You really want to give them all the information before they read your essay. And you also want to tell them how you're going to conclude. It almost doesn't feel natural because you feel like you want to keep some of it to sort of surprise them. But actually, I think that something I've realised is that if you let them know from the offset where you're going, then it helps them follow your line of the argument throughout. So even though it doesn't feel very fun, it doesn't feel like a very fun way of writing an essay, it's good to sort of let the professor know where you're thinking of going, because it helps them follow your line of argument. You want no surprises, no suspense. This is not a story, this is an academic essay. Okay, so now for the main bulk. This is like the main part of your essay, no matter how long it is. So a lot of people always talk about the depth/breadth trade-off. So like, should you go really deep into a point, or should you make loads of like sort of brief points so you cover more ground? In my experience, I always think it's better to go for depth if you're really like not sure what to choose. I always think that it's good to go for like a happy medium of both, but generally I think it's better to go for depth over breadth, because the deeper you go into, you know, a certain viewpoint or a certain topic, the more you can sort of show that you're really critically thinking about each point. You're not just sort of brushing over it. If you go deep into a point, then it shows that you have a really sort of advanced critical understanding of the topic, and that will mark you higher in the long run. Okay, so now let's talk about conclusions. So these are the last few sentences. This is your mic drop moment. You want to leave the marker with something, you want to say something clever so that the marker will walk away thinking about that essay. So basically your last few sentences want to be something that they're going to go, wow, yeah, that's an interesting, it really frames your essay, it hammers your point home, but it also gives them a little bit of maybe a skewed viewpoint to sort of leave the essay with, if that makes sense. So for example, I wrote an essay in second year all about Star Wars, and these are my last few sentences, just to sort of give you an idea of what I mean by a mic drop sentence. So I'll also put it on screen just so you guys can read it. A narrative that historically validates unhealthy representations of masculinity will arguably continue to validate those representations as long as the series continues. Instead, it might be more productive to consider that a new intergalactic film franchise unrelated to Star Wars, but with new male and female heroes alike, is needed in order to revolutionize the social conversation for good. So I've not really skewed away from my point. You know, my essay isn't like, I'm not going far away from my line of argument. My argument is about toxic masculinity in the Star Wars franchise, by the way. I'm not really straying from my argument, but I am also sort of leaving them with a final point about saying that actually maybe you need to sort of change up, you need to switch the language, you need to sort of change it all up, and maybe like you can't carry on this franchise at all, which is, you know, not straying away from my point. It still backs up my point, but it's just like a skewed way of looking at it, if that makes sense. And then finally, this is really, really important, make sure you reference as you go along. References are really, really, really important, and that's something that I only really got to grips with until third year. Referencing is so boring. We're not even going to beat around the bush. No one likes referencing, no one wants to reference, but it's really, really important, because it means that your lecturers, your professors can sort of trace back where you've got your quotes from, where you've got your sources. You know, they can make sure that everything you're saying is original, and also it And also it's just a really good way of sort of keeping an academic register. It definitely is the difference between like a first and like a 2-1, for example. You know, if you can learn how to reference really, really well, then that is great. So yeah, make sure you reference as you go along. And you know, in terms of like my actual tips of referencing, just look up referencing guides for your referencing style. We always use a referencing style called MHRA or Harvard. They were like the main two that I used. And I always found that just looking up MHRA referencing guide would always give me like all the different ways to reference different types of things. So like if I need to reference a film, I would literally just Google it. Like I would just straight up Google it. And if I was really unsure, then your lecturers are always on hand to ask. So make sure you ask questions where you can. So yeah, that is basically everything I did to get a first in my English degree without reading hardly any of the books. If you apply that way of writing to all of your essays and all of your work, then it's a good one. Like you will smash it out the park. And also, like, make sure you have time for other things. You know, uni's not just about your degree, it's about societies, clubs. Make sure you're still doing everything you want to do besides your degree. And I feel like this sort of way of working will help you do that. And that is just about everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comment section down below if anything I said sort of helps you, and if you have any tips of your own, you know, let's help each other out in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you would like a notification every time I upload a new video. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram, my handle is @ella.houghton. Follow me on there for all the most up-to-date information on what is going on in my life, and follow me on TikTok. My handle is @ella.houghton and the last O is a 0. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!